Shalom, everybody. Welcome to this week's journey through Torah. This week, again, still in the wilderness. We go through life, we experience so many things, but then we start to understand it's not just about the destination. We lose sight of the journey when we are just focused on the destination. The journey affects how we get to the destination. So while we look ahead to the goal, to the prize, we cannot forget that the journey is important too. Life in the wilderness, life in the journey, how we get from here to there is important as well. And we need to focus on Yahweh in the midst of life's circumstances and the things that happen. We need to make sure that we are surrendering to Him, submitting to Him, and honoring Him in the midst of the things that we come across in life. When life gets difficult, what do we do with it, right? So we've got a few things to look at today. We're going to talk about one individual here, Korach, and we're going to take a look at what he had done within the midst of the assembly and compare that to how we should be working with each other as well. And then we're going to look at the work that was given to him, the task that was assigned to him, and looking at us. How do we relate and respond to the task that's been given to us? So we got a few things to look at, okay? And I don't want to jump into the point to reveal later, but I hope you stick with me in the midst of this study. And I hope it is encouraging to you, and I hope it challenges you as well, all right? So let's jump into this. Numbers chapter 6, verses 1 through 3. It says that Korach, the son of Itzar, the son of Kohat, the son of Levi, and Dathan and Aviram, the sons of Eliav, and On, the son of Pelet, the sons of Reuven, they took men. And they rose up before Moshe with a number of the people of Israel, 250 chiefs of the congregation, chosen from the assembly, well-known men. And they assembled themselves together against Moshe and against Aaron, and they said to them, "You have gone too far, for all in the congregation are holy, every one of them, and Yahweh is among them. So why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of Yahweh?" Now, there's a lot to be said in here, okay? They're making accusations against Moshe and Aaron, and are they factual? Are they true? Or are they trying to reason in their own thoughts and ideas behind the reasons why certain decisions were made? Ultimately what this comes to is this. When they were in the wilderness, they were following Yahweh, but they were doing so under Moshe's leadership. Okay, so when the people were grumbling and complaining and doing all these things against Moshe, they were really complaining against Yahweh because Yahweh was the one who really led them there, right? And they all saw it. Even Korah says, we all hear from God kind of thing, right? Which they did. Okay, that when Yahweh came down and he spoke at the mountain and he revealed himself to them, all the people of Israel that were there heard the voice of God. Thing is, they all stood back and removed themselves from that voice. And they said, "Moses, you go find out what God says, and then you tell us, and that way we can do it." All Israel, they were in agreement with this. We can't bear to hear the voice of God anymore, or we're going to die. And now they're saying, we all heard the voice of God. We don't need you, Moses, right? Well, how come you're telling us this stuff and we don't like what you're saying, Moses? Well, this is what he was supposed to do. This is what the people agreed on, that Moses would go find out what Yahweh said and tell them. And now they're not wanting to do it. And ultimately, I believe what this ties in with is offense, because they had just gone through the sin of the spies, and not all of them, just the 10, right? So the 10, they come back with a slanderous report of the land. They lose sight of the focus of where they were supposed to have their eyes and their heart. And they speak against the promise that Yahweh was giving them. And all the people of Israel, they lost hope, and they said, "That's it, we're going to die in the wilderness." And it got to a point where Yahweh says, "Okay, if that's what you really want, I'll use the next generation to fulfill my plans." See, and that was in last week's Parsha, okay? So we're not going back there. But now consider this. The grumbling, the complaining, it doesn't stop, really, does it? And then now they're in the wilderness, and they're going to die in the wilderness, and, we might as well have just gone back to Egypt, and we need to elect new leaders. All of this, and then Korah rises. See, I believe it was this offensive spirit. Everyone was offended, and so that allowed Korach to go and raise up these leaders among Israel. These weren't just average guys. These were leaders among Israel that he got to join with him to go speak and confront Moshe and Aaron. And understand, yeah, they were in error in what they were doing. And, they could have talked to Moses in a different way, and they would have not had the same outcome, right? But what we learn is that in Israel, in our communities, within a people of Yahweh, within the kingdom of Yahweh, we all have a place. We all have a role. We all have a part to play. None of us are insignificant. We all have something to do. Problems come in, though, is when we want what somebody else is given to do. Or, well, I want to do this, and maybe we're not ready for that. Maybe we can be trained for that, but we're not ready for it now. See, so we have to understand, Yahweh has put people in our lives to help us. And we have to learn to submit to Yahweh, yes, but we have to learn to submit to one another. I mean, Scripture tells us to do that too, right? We can all learn from each other. None of us are more important than anyone else. None of us are less important than anyone else. We all have a part to play, all right? So within the community as a whole, it functions better when we as individuals are in our places and we know what to do. We have to realize, first off, that we are part of a whole. And it's not just me and God against the world, right? That we are part of a community. And even if we don't have anyone around us right now, I know the videos that we send out, I get reports from all over the world, okay? There's people watching all over who say, I don't really have anybody near me. I get that. I understand that. And I'm not saying anything bad about that. It's just our heart and our desire should be to be able to gather with the people of Yahweh. Now, if we don't have that now, keep looking, keep praying, and who knows at what point it will be given to you, okay? Because we are not meant to walk this alone. And we have to stop to realize that. We all have a part to play. Romans 12, looking in verse 3 through 5, it says, For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. For as in one body we have many members, and the members do not all have the same function. So we, though many, are one body in Messiah, and individually members of one another. It's saying that because we belong to Messiah, we are in each other's lives. And maybe we've never met, maybe we've never seen each other yet. It doesn't change the fact that we're still part of a people that are called apart and set apart to Yahweh. Let's learn to live that way, so that when we do meet each other, it's a joyous time. It's a time when we can come together in unity of heart, unity of mind, unity of purpose to serve Yahweh together. It'll be a joyous occasion when we come together, not grievous, and not saying, well, I wonder what this guy's up to, kind of thing. No, we need to learn to just have fellowship with one another because we have fellowship with Yahweh. All right. 1 Corinthians 12:25 says that there may be no division in the body, but that the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together. If one member is honored, all rejoice together. Now you are the body of Messiah and individually members of it. Didn't we just read this in Romans? Yes, we did. Because it's a problem for the ages, right? We want what we want, and we don't really take into regard what Yahweh wants when it comes to how we're living our life. Are we truly surrendered to Him? Yes. Then we need to make sure that we are working with one another. No one person can do it all. I don't care what it is. Not one person can do everything. The problems come in, though, is when we come into a place, well, I want to do stuff, but they won't let me, right? And sometimes that is the case, all right? And there's nothing I'm going to say here that's going to be an absolute in every single situation and scenario, okay? But sometimes, yeah, that's the case. But other times, maybe we're not ready for the things that we want. We need to be trained for it. Maybe we're not mature enough. Maybe we don't know the things we need to know. Maybe there's just some time that needs to happen and be involved. Maybe because we're not trying to work with one another, we're trying to work above people. That's a problem too, right? I heard it said this way, I want to serve God, but only in an advisory role. If we feel that we can only come in to be a part of something only if we can lead it, that's a problem. Okay? We need to be able to come in and join with the people of Yahweh where they're at and where we're at and learn to work together in that. All right. When we don't do our part, we all suffer. We all suffer. So how do you view what Yahweh has given to you? Much like Korach. Korach was dissatisfied with what was given to him, and a lot was given to him. We'll cover that in a second. He had a huge task, right? He wanted something that was not his to have. He wanted Aaron's job. Now, here's the thing. They were both Levites. Okay. So, he was a son of Levi, right? You go through the lineage like we just did at the beginning when we started. He was a descendant of Levi, as was Aaron. So that wasn't the issue. The issue was, no, it wasn't his place because he was given a different task, and Aaron was given his task that nobody else could do. It was given to Aaron and his sons, right? So we all have roles within Israel. And I'm going to use this as an example. King Uzziah tried to offer incense, and he was struck with leprosy. Look at 2 Chronicles 26:16-21. It says, when he was strong, he grew proud to his destruction. For he was unfaithful to Yahweh his God, and entered the temple of Yahweh to burn incense on the altar of incense. But Azariah the priest went in after him with 80 priests of Yahweh who were men of valor. And they withstood King Uzziah and said to him, it is not for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to Yahweh, but for the priests, the sons of Aaron, who are consecrated to burn incense. Go out of the sanctuary, for you have done wrong, and it will bring you no honor from Yahweh. Wow. Verse 19. Then Uzziah was angry, and now he had a censer in his hand to burn incense. And when he became angry with the priests, leprosy broke out on his forehead in the presence of the priests in the house of Yahweh by the altar of incense. And Azariah the chief priest and all the priests looked at him, and behold, he was leprous in his forehead. And they rushed him out quickly, and he himself hurried to go out, because Yahweh had struck him. And King Uzziah was a leper till the day of his death, and being a leper lived in a separate house, for he was excluded from the house of Yahweh. And Jotham his son was over the king's household, governing the people of the land. So again, the king tried to go in. The king, the ruler, right, tried to go in and offer incense, and that was not his place to do so. It was only Aaron and his sons who were able and allowed to do this, right? Think of Nadav and Avihu when they tried to offer strange fire coming towards the incense altar, right? And what happened to them? They were fire came out from before the Lord and consumed them. So here he didn't even get that far. He was just angry with the priest because they wouldn't let him offer the incense. And that's what I'm getting at. We all have our roles and our parts to play, and when we try to take over somebody else's role, well, I like that role, I want to do that role. Maybe it's not ours. Maybe it's their place. Now, we can help them in that, but maybe it's not our place to actually have that role. So we need to learn what Yahweh desires and what he wants. So the dispute of Korah with his followers, at time reads this way. Each faction in the rebellion had its own agenda. They were united only in their opposition to Moses and Aaron. Like many demagogues, they defined themselves by what they were against, not a vision of what they stood for. That's huge. So many people today are defining themselves by what they are against, and we're not saying what we are for. The problem with that is we're constantly looking at the things that we're against and not having our focus centered on Yahweh and his word. And we say we're standing up for Yahweh and his word, but then all of our talk, all of our actions, and all the things that we put out there are all about the things we're against. We need to focus on what we are for. Yahweh, his kingdom, his life, learning to walk in his ways, right? Life in the wilderness, right? Learning to gather with one another at the mountain to go into the promise, to hear the heart and the voice of Yahweh. These are things we need to look at and consider this as well. The 250 men that stood with Korach to oppose them. I'm not going to get into this part of this really today, the actual part where it says, so all of you think you can bring incense, then go get your censers and come back here and we'll see who God receives, right? Well, you know what happens. I mean, this is after Nadav and Avihu. You know what's going to go on. I don't think anybody was exempt. They say, oh, no, that's not going to happen. What I believe is that each person thought they were going to be the last one standing. That in their eyes, Yahweh was going to legitimize them and everybody else was going to go away. See, again, we're talking pride. We're talking, this is the heart. They were all standing against Moses and Aaron because it served them at this time. But when it came down to it, they really weren't banding together in unity of heart, mind, and purpose for Yahweh. They were just, this serves my purpose right now, so I'm going to join with others to help me serve in this purpose right now, and at the right time, then we can break off and work with each other. You know, the idea, you know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I don't like that, and it's not really true either, because so you guys join together, you get rid of your enemy, and now, what do? Now you're back at each other. See, now you're the one who you joined with is now back to being your enemy because you got rid of this other guy. See, and that's not unity. That's not what the Father has called us to. So here, all the people that came against Moses and Aaron, they were like, nope, this serves my purpose. I'm going to jump in here and do this, right? So let's look at a few more things. Jude 1:10-12. But these speak evil of those things which they know not. But what they know naturally, as brute beasts in those things, they corrupt themselves. Woe to them! For they have gone in the way of Cain, and ran greedily after the error of Balaam for reward, and perished in the gainsaying of Korach. Verse 12. These are spots in your feasts of charity, when they feast with you, feeding themselves without fear. Clouds they are without water, carried about of winds, trees whose fruit withers, without fruit, twice dead, plucked up by the roots. Again, these are things we're looking at. Clouds without water, being driven around by all the winds. Winds are also like spirit. The word for wind, spirit, is ruach. So, in other words, being tossed around by every spirit that's out there to deceive, and they're just buying into it, and bringing division within the body. That should be something as well. We can disagree with one another without bringing division into the body. There is a difference, and it really depends on how it's done and why. The motive behind it is important as well. So what happens here? Well, first off, we read that in 16:1 it starts, Vayekach Korach, and that's from the word lakach, which means to take or to carry away or to take away. So it says Korah took men. It doesn't just say that he gathered men to himself, which still would have been bad, but this reads like he took men. It's kind of like the idea of it alludes to being deceptive. He took men. He snatched them up and deceived them. Laying traps for them and hook, line, and sinker. Man, they fell for it, right? He's getting up ways to cause division within the assembly and to be divisive. And man, Proverbs, what does it say? Proverbs 6. There are 6 things that Yahweh hates, 7 that are abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among the brothers. That's the biggest one, right? One who sows discord among the brothers. And that's what Korah was doing. Okay, and so what we find is that he gathered men together, he snatched them up and took them in, and we have a people within the assembly of Yahweh who were gathered into themselves as their own little assembly or congregation that were not serving the same purpose. Okay, and we do find this in different places through Scripture. Different people with different levels of dedication, different levels of whatever. And some really don't mean it much, and some do. Here's one example. The closer you were to the tabernacle, the more you had to know and experience what the holy things are. You had to know how to discern clean, unclean, and holy and common. because you could not bring the unclean into the tabernacle, right? So you had to know these things. So the closer you were to the tabernacle, the more important it was that you understood holiness. Now, all Israel was to be holy, right? All Israel was holy, so they all had to have a working idea of it, but it really didn't become such a big deal until they got closer to the tabernacle. So, and that's why the Leviim and the priests were given a lot of responsibility. And they had to watch over and guard and protect the sanctity of the tabernacle. All right. So again, we find people within a people within a people. Israel, when they're going through the wilderness, how many times do you see? Well, there were some that were on the outskirts of the camp. There were stragglers. I mean, think about Balaam, right? Trying to speak against the stragglers. And again, Yahweh stood for them, right? He wasn't able to speak against them. But this is where he was taken. This is where Balak took him. He's like, let's go and look to the edges of the camp. Well, who were on the edges of the camp? I mean, we find those who were not quite in, not quite out. And think of Amalek. Who were the ones that he struck? The ones who were on the edge of the camp. The ones who weren't really fully in, so going towards the tabernacle. But the ones who were not really all the way out, just kind of straggling along behind, that kind of thing. We're talking about a dedication here, right? And we even see it in the midst of Yeshua's lives. So in Yeshua's life, he had his disciples, right? But there were certain levels even among that. And I'm not saying that they were evil or wrong. I'm just saying there were certain levels of dedication that they all had with Yahweh in the midst of that, right? Look, Yeshua, he spoke to the multitudes. But then from the multitudes, there were 120 that were gathered to him. In the midst of that, there were 70 that were gathered in there. And even among the 70, there were 12. And then even among the 12, there were 3. And even among the 3, there was 1, Yochanan, John. And so what we see here is the relationship was different with each of these levels. And that's what I'm looking at here. So Korach took men who had a different relationship and gathered them into their own little assembly to come against Moshe and Aaron. We see in Numbers 16:3, it says that these men with Korach, they assembled themselves against Moshe and Aaron, and their argument was that each individual of Israel was holy. Therefore, they didn't need any leadership, especially not Moshe and Aaron. And the interesting thing here is that we don't need you to lead us, Moses, but Korah's idea was, well, I'm going to lead you instead. Right. So we don't need a leader, but me. See, this was all motive and all these things that were happening. But another thing that's interesting is that they referred to the entirety of the assembly of Israel as kulam, not kala. You say, well, what's the big difference in that? Well, kulam is a grouping of individuals together, but kala is one entity. See, there's a difference. There's a difference being united together in one for a purpose or just a bunch of people together in the same place. Right? There is a difference there. Look, again, Numbers 16:3. It says, for all the congregation is holy, every one of them, and Yahweh is among them. So why then do you exalt yourselves against the assembly of Yahweh? Again, why was the need here? It says, you're exalting yourself above us? Well, no, not really. He had more responsibility within Israel because he spoke with Yahweh. Remember, the scripture says mouth to mouth, right? So he had that place. And further, the people said to Moses, you go find out what God says, and then we can do it, right? But here they're saying, no, you put too much on yourself. You think you're all that, right? Well, we're here to tell you that you're not, and we're going to take charge. Well, it didn't quite work out the way that they wanted. But what are some things we see here? The idea that they're talking about is this. Since each individual is holy, we have no need for anyone else. We don't need a priest, Aaron. We don't need a prophet, Moshe. Yet, how do we see Yahweh working with his people? We don't need anybody else because I hear from God, right? And we have the scripture where it says, for no one will need to be able to say to their brother, know Yahweh, for all will know him, right? He will teach us. But here's the fact of the matter. We're not there yet. We're not at a place where all know Yahweh. It doesn't mean he doesn't speak to us. It doesn't mean we can't hear his voice. It doesn't mean that we don't see what he desires. problem is we're not really willing to listen to anyone else because, well, I hear God for myself. And what if our discernment is off? What if we're not able to really discern what we think we're hearing? We need to have people in our life to help us out with this, right? And these are some things we look at. So how do we see Yahweh working with his people? Well, by sending prophets, teachers, shepherds, priests. By the way, Yeshua would be included in this grouping of people. Okay, so my question is, does being called a holy people relieve you of responsibility and authority? No. No, matter of fact, because you are a holy people, it puts you in a place to work with authority that's been put in your life. And that affirms your life and helps solidify it, right? We learn that there are people that are put in our life to help us with life. Not to be overbearing or not to be burdensome, but to help. Look, you are a holy people. We see this time and again. Exodus 22 says you are consecrated to me. And Numbers 15:30 says that you may remember and do all my commandments and be holy to your God. Deuteronomy 7:6 says you are a people holy to Yahweh your God. And Yahweh your God has chosen you to be a people for his treasured possession out of all the people on the face of the earth. So you are a holy people. You are a part of a holy people. So as a person that is holy and that is set aside as such, be careful that you don't try to cut yourself off from the grouping of a holy people. See that? As someone who is called by his name, you're not the only one. And we have to be able to work together in the midst of that. Deuteronomy 12:8 says, you shall not do according to all that we are doing here today, everyone doing whatever is right in his own eyes. Proverbs 12:15 says the way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but the wise man listens to advice. Proverbs 21:2 says that every way of man is right in his own eyes, but Yahweh weighs the heart. See, we need to be able to have this. So be careful which grouping of people we put ourselves with, right? What happened here? Well, when things were happening with Korach and those who followed him, there was instruction given to them to disassociate from this people. But it's interesting how it reads. Numbers 16, verses 21 and 24 says, separate yourselves from among this congregation that I may consume them in a moment. And then verse 24, say to the congregation, get away from the dwelling of Korach, Dathan, and Aviram. So again, he says, say to get away from this congregation, not like the congregation as a whole, but this assembly of Korach and his followers. Right? And it says, tell the congregation, the assembly of Yahweh, to get away from these men. And so again, the reason why we're grouping together and what we're grouping for is important. So make sure that we are grouping together in righteousness and for the right things as well. That we're not joining ourselves to someone who just speaks really well. You know, someone who just has a very charismatic personality, or it could just be someone who is just very gifted, or someone who, wow, this guy can really speak. I really admire him. Be careful that these are not the reasons why we're joining ourselves to people. Okay, has Yahweh given them to do what they are doing? You know, we would say, have they been anointed to do that, so to speak? You know, like the priesthood was anointed to be priest. So has people been recognized to be in the positions that they're in, right? Look, 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, do not be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals. Proverbs 22:24 says, don't associate with an angry man. Make no hot-tempered man your companion. If you do, you may learn his ways and find yourself caught in a trap. Proverbs 29:22 says, angry people stir up strife and hot-tempered people commit many crimes. Are you starting to see something here? Be careful who you join yourselves to and associate with, because it will affect your life and end up affecting the lives of people around you too, right? Hebrews 12, verse 14 says, strive for peace with everyone and holiness, without which no one will see the Lord. See to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and by it many become defiled. See to it that you don't miss out because there's bitterness growing in our heart, right? Make sure that when we are approaching what Yahweh has given us, that we're doing so with a thankful heart, knowing when I'm doing this, maybe Yahweh is training me up for something else. What we've learned is that Yahweh is asking you to do something now to prepare you for something he has for you later. Consider this. When the time came for them to build the tabernacle, he said, you're going to need this much silver, this much gold, these gems, these stones, all of these, right? Well, where did it come from? Where did they get it? Well, see, when Yahweh says, so you're coming out of Egypt, ask your neighbor for stuff, right? What are they going to need it for? They're going in the wilderness. God's going to take care of them. What do they need the stuff for? Here's one example, right? So if they were obedient then they'll have what they need now to do what Yahweh is asking. So he will equip you for what he has in store for you, but you've got to be obedient as well in that. All right. So the point I'm getting here at is serve where Yahweh has planted you, where Yahweh has established you, where he has brought you to. Serve where he has planted you, and that will cause you to grow. Okay. Look, Korach, it says that he was the son of Itzar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi. Numbers 4:4 says, this is the service of the sons of Kohath in the tent of meeting, the most holy things. The Kohathites were the ones who carried the most holy things. That is a huge honor. They were to carry the holy things. But, Korah, for whatever reason, well, I don't want to carry stuff. I don't want to be a grunt, right? I don't want to do that. I want to tell people what to do. I like the smell of the incense. I want to smell like incense. For whatever reason, okay? He was saying, I don't want to do what I was given to do. I want to do what he was given to do. And further, it's not just that I want to do that, but I don't want him to do it because I want to do it. See, we're despising not only where we're at, but we're despising where Yahweh has put and blessed someone else. And be careful with that. Okay, you don't want to go there. What about Adam? Right? Let's go back. In Genesis 2:15, Yahweh God took the man and he put him in the garden of Eden to work it and keep it. It says to work it and keep it. It's la'avdah, and that means the work. Avad is to work. Oved, right? It means servant, but this is also the idea of worship. This is also the idea of worship. There are certain aspects of the avodah, like the Yom Kippur service, and certain aspects of the tabernacle where worship was work, right? So this is worship. And the other one is ul shamra, which is shamar, which is to keep, to guard, to protect. So shamar, to worship, to serve, to work, and keep, and protect. And this is what Adam was told to do. And this is priestly language, because the Levi'im and the Kohanim were given these instructions as well in regards to the tabernacle. They were given the same things to do. Psalm 1:1-3 says, blessed is the man who walks not in the way of the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of Yahweh, and on his law he meditates day and night. And he is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. And all he does, he prospers, because he is planted by streams of living water, and he is growing where Yahweh has planted him. It's not like he's planted, well, I don't like where this stream is getting me, and he uproots itself and goes somewhere else. No, he's growing there, because this is where Yahweh has put him and established him, and he's going to produce fruit there. Okay, Colossians 3:14-17 says, and above all things, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Messiah rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in one body, and be thankful. So let the word of Messiah dwell in you richly, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom, singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs with thankfulness in your hearts to God. And whatever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Yeshua, giving thanks to God the Father through him. Whatever we're doing, do for the kingdom, do for his honor, do for his glory. Whatever we're doing, make sure it's done in a place of unity of heart. Make sure that it's done in a place that brings honor to Yahweh and helps build up one another. Sometimes that brings correction. Sometimes it's just lifting each other up. Whatever it may be, make sure we're doing it in a way that is intended to build up one another, build up the kingdom, build up what Yahweh has given us to. 1 Corinthians 15:58 says, "Therefore, my beloved brothers, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain." Whatever you are doing, whatever He has called you to, do it. It's not insignificant. Okay? Some of us say, well, this is what I'm doing, but I feel like I'm not really doing much. Well, do it. Do it wholeheartedly. Who knows what's going to come next, right? So just do what the Father has given you to do, put right in front of you, do it with all your heart, and just see where it grows, because there's fruit. Okay? 1 Thessalonians 1, 2, and 3 says, "We give thanks to God always for all of you, constantly mentioning you in our prayers, remembering before our God and Father your work of faith and labor of love and steadfastness of hope in our Lord, Yeshua HaMashiach." Whatever you're doing, do it for Him, and it will be a blessing to His heart, but it'll end up being a blessing to His people too. So let our heart and our minds and our focus not be on the failures of the past. That's going to cause bitterness and resentment and anger and all these things. But let's turn the past over to Yahweh, repent if need be, and move forward into what He is calling us to. Move forward into where we're at. And when we're all doing what we're supposed to do, the body will work together beautifully and function flawlessly. And it'll be an amazing thing where all people and all nations can look and see you and the things that you do and how you are a part of this great people and say, wow, the God they serve is the one true God. Let people see your heart, not just for the Father, but for His creation. And then it'll testify of your love for the Father. Why does it say, and they'll know your disciples by? What's the answer? By their love for one another. May everything we do be based out of the love that we have for Yahweh. And it's not a matter of a hatred for that group or a hatred for that group. No, a love for Yahweh. Let the things that we do be because we love Him. And that will affect how we do everything else. All right, guys, that's all we have for you today. I pray that this was encouraging to you, and I pray it challenges you as well. So until next time, be blessed and shalom.